welcome to this week's installment of Tinker Tuesday. This week I am pivoting away from messing with the Grouch, and we are going to play again with the very classic Norco Rideau hybrid that we converted to a couple different things. It really kind of has been a roller coaster ride of iterations. And for the longest time, this bike has been my perfect example of my favorite way of going about building something. It's David Freiberger from Roadkill Hot Rod Magazine that coined this, and I'm going to steal it from him. Do not get it right, just get it running. And if that is not the epitome and the perfect explanation of the way I like to go about things, I kind of don't know what is. I've obviously robbed some stuff off of this. I did rob the saddle from this bike, and the seat post I just kind of threw out. It is on the Grouch right now, along with the bars which were robbed for the track lacrosse build. So this bike, after a very good season of winter commuting, did serve its purpose, did everything it needed to, but that is kind of why you stopped seeing it a little bit. It ended up, just like everything in this shed, donating some parts for other builds. But today it's going to finally fill the gap of an idea that I always maintain, yet maybe don't make nearly public enough. And that is that it's worth having a low dollar, low care bike that is always ready to go at any moment's notice. That's almost kind of the bummer with all the projects that I like to take on. They start out really, really fun, and they start out as this like worthless, kind of carefree product that you take the time to build up and build up and build up till you get to the point where you're like, yeah, this is where I wanted it, and then you don't want to ruin it after that. So I'm hoping after today that this will be as far as I want to go with the Rideau, so we don't end up with a bunch of stuff like the Tricross, the Crux, the Poseidon at this point. They're all kind of precious, and that is sort of the catalyst for building something like this. And yeah, it's a good possibility I'm just rationalizing at this point because I'm building another bike. Anyway, I can hear you asking, what are you going to put on it? Well, the FSA Gossamer bar that was originally on the Tricross, the Monster Cross. These oval 730 cranks that were donated to the channel, the spare 2x10 SRAM Apex shifters with SRAM Rival derailleurs. I actually bought a new chain that ought to make some people happy. And this cassette. I also went out of my way to buy this Brand X headset. It is a press-in headset, but it uses the sealed bearings. This is the same one that I used on the Budget Challenge gravel bike. I was very, very pleased with how it went together, so I wanted to use it on this. Actually, I wish I had ordered more of these. I like these a lot. Also, I keep forgetting that I have more things. The Mini V brakes that are going to go on it, and also a new bottom bracket, plus this really strange sized seat post, which I was very happy to get a hold of. Okay, so as is with the beginning of all of my in the shed Tinker Tuesday projects, especially when you take on as big of a project as a complete rebuild, I tend to like to take everything completely apart. And actually, I think in the last Tinker Tuesday video, someone had kind of criticized that he wasn't particularly happy with any of my mechanics videos, because I don't go into depth and show like all of the nuances and everything that goes along with putting a bike together or taking a bike apart. And there is kind of a reason for that. It's wildly dull content. I wouldn't enjoy making it at all. And to be honest with you, there are really, really good videos out there that will teach you how to do everything that I do on this channel. The idea here is to inspire and get you excited to go try and do it yourself. If you need to look up how to do it, then there's great resources from all sorts of places that I'm sure everybody will link below. I promise you, I never once wanted to teach how to do bike mechanics. Worth noting, the fenders are going to stay on this build, though I think I forgot to mention that I plan on changing the fork to at least one of the carbon forks that I have in here. I'm just going to kind of like throw together the little bits of like, you know, boring pieces, and when we get to like the fork part, there are two jobs that I weirdly sort of hate doing on a bike without any sort of real explanation, and that is putting seats on seat posts. I don't know why I hate doing it as much as I do, and also swapping chain rings. There's just something about like tightening and trying to break them free that you're next to sharp teeth that I just don't like. Okay, so as I said, I was just gonna kind of pick away at this to a point where I could actually see how it all is going to look like. I think we're kind of at that point now, so here we go. Obviously the Ritchie carbon fork is on here. I didn't even bother to try the Easton one. The only real annoying part about this fork is it has no spots to actually put a fender on. So with just a little bit of zip tie ingenuity, it is on there and likely will not go anywhere. Of course, there is the slight possibility that someday I will put the Easton fork on here just for fun. Also, this is starting to take longer than I gave myself time for, so I just kind of want to like wrap this up a little bit. Way longer than I wanted, but for fair reasons. Better. You know how I'm always talking about like expectation versus reality, or like what the end product versus what was in your head is? I think today was a very good example of that happening in very real time. I had it in my head that the Mini Vs were going to work, that they were going to clear the fenders, even though I knew for sure that they really weren't going to. That even though I knew for a fact that I had a smaller seat post diameter and that it was probably going to affect the clamp diameter size of the derailleur, like the front derailleur clamp size, that it was probably going to be smaller, and that I was going to need some sort of like spacer or shim to make up the difference. That I don't have any bulk brake cable or brake cable ends, like the cable ends that go on the housing ends. I don't have any of that here, so I had to scramble and find all of that. All those things. I knew before even starting this that I was going to be missing all of those things, and that it was going to be something I was going to be scrambling to find. And yet I still unrealistically allotted myself for the day probably like an hour and a half to 2 hours of my time, figuring no problem, gonna get it done. Though at the end of it all, frustration mountain completed. We do have a finalized, albeit non-bar taped, suitable, rideable piece of equipment here. Watch the way this rear brake cable housing dances as I pull the cable. That's all just braking efficiency lost. What was I saying before I got sidetracked? Yeah, it rides pretty good. So let's just go through all the things that change. We have a Brand X external cup sealed bearing headset. Obviously this is kind of in the way, but worth talking about. The SRAM Apex 10-speed shifter brake lever, those are set up to work with the original brake arms that we ordered for the budget gravel challenge bike. Enough, I didn't want to use them on Nick's bike because they did still leave a little bit to be desired, though they are way better than your normal mountain bike V-brake arms. The Mini Vs that I originally ordered for this would clear these tires, but there was no way to make them work with the SKS longboard fenders that are on here right now. Oval crankset with the GXP bottom bracket, that was fairly straightforward. These may as well be a SRAM crank, and a lot of ingenuity to get this clamp to work on this seat tube. So I have this like rubber stuff that I don't know where I got, that I cut into like small slivers, and then I actually cut in half this way. See, there it is. Really not all that different than what like Shimano ships with their lower end stuff. No, this is not worth doing if you don't already have all the parts or a source for getting the parts for less than retail. Horde of parts, thrown on whatever you want, very easy to do. To do it from scratch, less so. But no doubt, it is fun to watch, and there is nothing better than the feeling of getting something done start to finish in one day. This thing's always going to work. It's never going to give me any issues. Same with the Tri-Cross, I know, but this, far less precious. It's got fenders for the rainy, gross days. The Ronster Cross, if something looks at it the wrong way, it starts to corrode because it's just raw aluminum. Okay.